I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your terrifying host, and you're about to hear that story in today's episode of Terrifying Encounters. Today I've got a horrifying tale featuring a werewolf attack on an airplane at cruising altitude, a desperate fight for survival in confined quarters, and a sole survivor with no memory of the carnage that claimed 200 lives. If you're already part of our community, your support means the world to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this. Or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. Continental Airways Flight 447 took off from O'Hare International Airport at 2:15 in the afternoon of a Tuesday in October. It was a Boeing 737-800 bound for Denver, transporting 148 passengers distributed between economy and executive classes. In the isolated compartment at the back of the airplane, separated by reinforced partitions and thick curtains, 8 low-danger prisoners waited handcuffed in modified seats. The transfer was necessary due to the overcrowding of Cook County Prison. Nonviolent crimes, for the most part, frauds, thefts, drug possession, nothing that justified excessive concern. 10 federal agents did the escort, all positioned in the isolated compartment together with the prisoners. Derek Vaughn led the team. With him were Tyler Hoffman, Caleb Brennan, Jimmy Ortiz, Travis Holbrook, Sean Ramsey, Brett Collins, Nathan Ford, Kyle Martinez, and Aaron Grayson, all heavily armed with high-caliber assault rifles and tactical rifles. They kept radios attached to their vests for communication when necessary. The prisoners remained quiet. Ronald Spears slept with his head rested against the window. Eddie Kirkland looked at the sky through the glass. The others talked low among themselves or simply waited for the trip to end. Everything proceeded tranquil. Derek checked the watch. 42 minutes since takeoff. They crossed western Iowa at 37,000 feet. Estimated time of arrival in Denver, 1 hour and 20 minutes. Tyler Hoffman cleaned the barrel of his M4 rifle. Caleb Brennan kept his eyes fixed on the detainees. Jimmy Ortiz checked the handcuffs periodically. The other agents alternated between active surveillance and moments of controlled relaxation. It was a routine operation. Simple. Without complications. Until the screams began. Derek heard first. Distant, muffled by the partition, but unmistakable. Screams of terror coming from economy class. He rose immediately. "Did you hear that?" Travis Holbrook nodded. Screams, many screams. The sounds increased rapidly, multiple voices, sharp, desperate. The type of sound that people make when they face death, accompanied by running. Objects falling, hits on the walls. Derek exchanged looks with Tyler. Something was very wrong. Travis, Brett, Nathan, you 3 go investigate what is happening there. Find out and return immediately. Understood, said Travis, taking his FN SCAR rifle. Brett Collins checked the magazine of his HK-416. Nathan Ford did the same with his M4A1 rifle. The 3 agents moved quickly to the partition, opened the thick curtain, and crossed to the main area of the airplane. Derek turned to the other 6 agents. Keep position here. Nobody moves until we have information. Tyler, Caleb, Jimmy, Sean, Kyle, and Aaron remained alert, weapons in fist, observing the prisoners who now also had noticed the screams and showed worried expressions. Travis, Brett, and Nathan advanced through the transition area between the isolated compartment and executive class. The corridor was empty initially, but the screams came each time louder, coming from economy. Whatever it is, it doesn't seem good, said Brett. Nathan held the rifle with more strength. Let's find out. They arrived at the entrance of executive class and stopped abruptly. A wave of people came running from economy class in absolute panic. Passengers pushed each other, stumbled, fell, rose, and continued running. Men, women, children. all with faces contorted of pure terror. "Get out of the way!" shouted a man in a suit, knocking down an elderly woman who fell heavily in the corridor. "Help! Somebody help me!" cried an adolescent girl, blood running from a deep cut on her forehead. The crowd invaded executive class like a desperate human avalanche. They occupied empty seats belonging to other passengers, piled up in the corridors, some even hid under the seats. Executive passengers rose, frightened, without understanding the sudden chaos. Travis tried to hold a man who was running. "Calm! What happened?" The man pushed him with brutal force. "Monster! There's a monster killing everybody!" He disappeared in the middle of the crowd before Travis could ask more questions. Brett looked at the other two agents. "Monster? The guy is delirious." "Or drugged," added Nathan, "or in deep shock." The wave of passengers finally began to diminish. Only some stragglers still ran, looking constantly back with eyes widened of terror. "We need to see what caused this," said Travis. "Let's go." The three agents advanced toward the entrance of economy class. The corridor became progressively more silent. Only the constant hum of the airplane engines and panting breaths distant. Then they saw the blood. Splashes on the white walls. Pools on the blue carpet. Drag marks that followed through the corridor like sinister trails. Red drops on the ceiling forming impossible patterns. "Shit," murmured Brett, his voice tense. They continued advancing, rifles raised and ready, fingers resting lightly on the triggers. Each step revealed more blood, more marks, more signs of something terrible. They arrived at the entrance of economy class, and the scene froze the blood in their veins. Bodies. Multiple bodies scattered through the first rows, right at the entrance between seats 2A and 4F. There were at least 6 corpses mutilated in horrible and impossible ways. A middle-aged man lay in the corridor with his chest completely open. His ribs were broken and projected out of the thoracic cavity like twisted and white branches. His lungs had been ripped out and thrown 3 rows ahead. His heart was absent, leaving only a bloody and empty hole where it should be. A young woman with blonde hair was decapitated in seat 3B. Her head had rolled under the front seat, blue eyes still open, fixing nothing in an expression of eternal terror. Her body remained sitting, held by the safety belt, while blood continued spurting from the severed neck in weak pulses, completely soaking her white blouse. 2 small children, no more than 8 or 9 years old, were shattered in seats 6C and 6D. Their small bodies had been literally torn in half at the height of the abdomen. Internal organs spread across the floor between the seats. Intestines, stomach, liver. Blood covered the seats, the lateral walls, the oval windows. An elderly man with gray hair had both arms ripped off at the height of the shoulders. The torn extremities left white humerus bones completely exposed, with fragments of muscles and tendons hanging like bloodied ropes. His face was frozen in a mask of agony. An adolescent girl was fallen in the corridor without the lower half of her body. Only her torso and head remained intact. Her intestines dragged across the carpet like dead snakes. Her fingers still contracted in final spasms. "God of heaven," whispered Nathan, his voice trembling uncontrollably. Brett turned quickly and vomited violently against the wall, the content of his stomach spraying on the metal. Travis forced himself to continue observing despite the growing nausea. He needed to understand. He needed to see the marks to determine what had caused that. Deep grooves tore the upholstery of the seats. The fabric was completely ripped off in several places, exposing the yellow foam underneath. Metal structures were twisted and broken. The internal walls of the airplane, the aluminum fuselage itself, had long and parallel marks. 4 lines uniformly spaced, as if gigantic and sharp claws had torn everything without effort. "It wasn't firearm," said Travis, forcing the words out. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't anything made by human hands. "Then what the hell did this?" asked Brett, cleaning his mouth with his shirt sleeve. Travis had no answer, no logical or rational answer. The three agents continued advancing slowly through economy class, passing by more and more bodies. The count increased with each row. 10 corpses, 15, 20. Businessmen with expensive suits torn together with their flesh. Women with dresses soaked in blood. Small children shattered. Mutilated elderly. All massacred. All destroyed beyond any human recognition. The smell was unbearable. Fresh blood mixed with feces and urine released at the moment of death. The metallic and putrid odor stuck in the throat. And then Travis heard something different. A low and guttural growl coming from the back of economy class. Deep, animalistic, primitive. He stopped immediately, raising his closed fist. Brett and Nathan froze behind him. The growl came again. Louder this time, accompanied by wet sounds. Chewing, like something big devouring raw flesh. "There's something alive here," whispered Travis, barely managing to articulate the words. They advanced centimeter by centimeter, rifles firmly pointed forward, sweat running down their foreheads despite the freezing air conditioning. The chewing sound continued, visceral, repugnant, bones being broken, flesh being torn from bones. Travis went around the last row of seats, row 28, and saw the creature. The creature was crouched between the last rows, partially hidden by the shadows. Even curved, it measured almost 2.5 meters in height. Its body was a mass of twisted muscles, covered by dark and tangled hair that hung like wet ropes. Each movement revealed an impossible physiology, bones that flexed in angles that violated known anatomy. Its legs were long and digitigrade, ending in paws with curved claws of 15 centimeters that scratched the carpet, creating deep grooves in the material. Its arms were disproportionately long, extending beyond the normal length of a human body. The hands had 5 fingers, each ending in yellowed and sharp claws that dripped fresh and still smoking blood. But it was the head that froze the mind. Part human, part animal. Impossible. Elongated snout projecting from the face like that of a wolf, but bigger, more muscular, more grotesque. Full of yellowed and irregular fangs, some broken, others pointing out of the mouth in impossible angles. Saliva dripped constantly from its black and swollen lips. The pointed ears projected from the top of the deformed skull, moving independently, capturing each sound. And the eyes. Bright yellow with black vertical pupils that reflected the light of the airplane lamps like a nocturnal animal. Malignant intelligence shone behind that yellow look. An ancient and terribly alive consciousness. A piece of human flesh hung between its teeth. A finger. Or perhaps a nose. The creature chewed slowly, deliberately, its eyes fixed on the 3 agents it had discovered. Travis, Brett, and Nathan froze. The werewolf tilted its head, examining them like a predator studying its next meal. Its muscles contracted under the skin, preparing. And then it roared. The sound was inhuman, deep, reverberating so loud that the airplane windows vibrated. The lights oscillated. The speakers emitted a sharp and painful feedback. "Shoot!" shouted Travis. The 3 agents opened fire simultaneously. The rifle shots were deafening in the confined space. Travis shot his FN Scar in controlled bursts. Brett shot his HK-416 in precise shots. Nathan shot his M4A1 with desperate fingers on the trigger. The 5.56mm bullets cut the air. The creature moved with speed that defied comprehension. It didn't run. It didn't jump normally. It exploded forward in a movement so fast that it seemed to disappear and reappear in a different location. The shots continued. The bullets hit seats, walls, glass, but the werewolf moved so rapidly that the bursts passed centimeters away from its body, the air breaking with the thunder of the projectiles that missed by little. "It's too fast!" shouted Brett, his rifle shooting continuously. The monster jumped over the seats in a frantic sequence, from one to another to another. Its movements were fluid, impossible, violating everything known about physics and biology. Its claws tore the upholstery as it passed, but it didn't decelerate, didn't get stuck. Only continued advancing, each movement taking it closer to the agents. The bullets pursued it, but it was always one step ahead, one movement ahead, a fraction of a second ahead. "Keep shooting!" ordered Travis, his rifle shooting continuously. The creature came closer. At 5 meters, then 3, then 1. Nathan retreated, stumbling over a putrid corpse. He fell on his back heavily. His rifle escaped from his hands and slid through the corridor. "No!" shouted Travis. The werewolf let itself fall from the ceiling directly on Nathan in a free-fall attack. The speed never diminished. The creature moved like a living projectile. The impact was devastating. The creature landed with all its weight on top of the agent, its muscles of 400 kilograms compressing the human body against the metal floor. The air was ripped from Nathan's lungs in a scream of agony that came out as a muffled and suffocated moan. Its claws perforated the bulletproof vest as if it were wet paper. They tore the skin underneath. They tore the lungs. They tore the heart. Nathan tried to scream, but only blood came from his mouth in constant gushes. The creature held Nathan's neck with one hand. Each finger was a sharp claw that perforated arteries and muscles simultaneously. The werewolf pulled with brute force. Nathan's neck opened like a knife wound. The jugular was completely torn. Blood spurted in a dark red and hot geyser that hit the ceiling at almost 2 meters in height, soaking the seats, the lateral walls, the face of the monster itself. Then the werewolf bit. Its teeth penetrated deeply into the mutilated neck, ripping out muscles, tendons, vertebrae fragments in a fierce lateral movement. Nathan convulsed a single time. His eyes turned back. His limbs trembled and stopped moving. Travis and Brett froze. Everything stopped for a moment. The scene that their eyes captured was so horrible, so brutally impossible, that their minds simply stopped. Their rifles descended some centimeters. Nathan didn't exist anymore. There was only an abandoned body, an empty shell being chewed and mutilated by that thing. The werewolf raised its bloodied head, its yellow eyes fixed directly on Travis, while it chewed slowly a piece of flesh it had ripped off. 5 seconds of absolute silence. Then Travis broke the trance. "Shoot that bastard! Shoot!" His voice cut the paralysis. Brett and Travis began to shoot again, but the werewolf was already in movement. It jumped to the lateral of the airplane, its claws scratching the metal while it gained vertical speed. Then to the ceiling, moving around the fuselage of the cabin with impossible speed. The bullets shot by Travis and Brett passed through the space it had occupied only milliseconds before. The monster moved in a frantic and chaotic pattern, impossible to predict, impossible to target. It seemed not only fast, but capable of moving in multiple directions simultaneously. Shots continued echoing through the airplane. Travis shot his entire magazine, then stuck another. Brett did the same. But the bullets rarely hit, and when they hit, the werewolf didn't seem to notice, only continued its frantic movement pattern. "Retreat!" shouted Travis. "Retreat now!" He held Brett by the arm, and the two turned to run. The creature pursued them. Shots continued echoing through the airplane while Travis and Brett ran through the corridor of economy class, jumping over bodies, slipping on blood, keeping the rifles raised despite the adrenaline that froze their movements. The werewolf reached them rapidly. Its steps shook the airplane. Its claws tore the walls as it passed, leaving deep marks on the metal that the creature had demolished. "Derek! Derek, can you hear me?" shouted Travis through the radio between pants. "There's something here. Something that isn't human. Killed Nathan." In the isolated compartment, Derek heard Travis's anguished voice through the radio, above the sounds of constant shots. His federal agent instinct shouted that something was terribly wrong. "Travis, define the situation," responded Derek, voice firm despite the adrenaline that accelerated his heart. "A huge monster. It's coming in our direction. It's too fast. We can't stop it." Sounds of shots continued through the radio, the sound of heavy steps, the inhuman roar of the creature. Derek turned to Tyler. "Something very wrong is happening. Prepare yourselves." Tyler, Caleb, Jimmy, Sean, Kyle, and Aaron raised their rifles, observing the prisoners and also the partition that separated their compartment from the rest of the airplane. In the main corridor, Travis and Brett arrived at executive class. Passengers who sheltered there screamed when they saw the bloodied agents entering running, followed by the horrible sound of the monster approaching. "Get out of the way!" shouted Brett, pushing people to the sides. The creature arrived at the entrance of economy class. It stopped for a moment, its snout twitching while it sniffed the air. Its yellow eyes scanned executive class, locating dozens of additional human prey. And it roared again. The sound was so loud that one of the oval windows of executive class cracked, a branched glass line spreading through the surface. Passengers began to scream uncontrollably, women, children, men, all in absolute panic. The werewolf advanced. Travis continued shooting while retreating. "Derek, we're in executive. The creature is pursuing us. It's killing passengers." Derek didn't respond. He had risen and was approaching the partition with his rifle raised. "All of you, move away from the prisoners," ordered Derek. "Keep defensive position here at the partition. Nobody enters without authorization." Caleb turned. "Derek, do you think this will arrive here?" "We won't allow it to arrive," responded Derek, his eyes fixed on the partition. In the main corridor, the werewolf had begun its massacre of executive class. A flight attendant who was trying to help an elderly woman move away was cut by the creature. Its claws crossed her body from shoulder to waist, opening her almost in half. She fell, her body moving uncontrollably while blood poured. A man who was trying to hide under a seat was grabbed by the legs. The creature dragged him out of his hiding place and lifted him in the air. It threw him against the lateral wall with force sufficient to leave a blood mark of 2 meters in height. The man fell, his bones broken in at least a dozen places. A small child, perhaps 5 years old, ran through the corridor looking for its parents. The werewolf caught it easily. A claw crossed its small body. It screamed a single time before everything became silent. Travis and Brett continued shooting desperately, trying to redirect the monster's attention away from the passengers. But it was useless. The creature was too fast, too strong, practically immune to damage. "Derek, the creature is killing everyone," shouted Travis through the radio. "We're losing control of the situation." Derek pressed the radio button. "All agents and executive, return to the isolated compartment, now!" Travis and Brett didn't hesitate. They turned and began to run. "Retreat! Retreat now!" shouted Travis, shooting backward while moving. They passed through the rows of seats, jumping over bodies, slipping on blood. The werewolf pursued them, but had stopped to feed again on another nearby passenger. Only some seconds of advantage. Travis and Brett arrived at executive class, shooting their rifles continuously while retreating. The passengers who were still alive began to run again, anticipating the danger that approached. Travis pressed the radio button while running, his voice panting and urgent. "Derek, this is Travis. There's something here that isn't human. A big thing." In the isolated compartment, Derek heard the transmission. His hand closed around the rifle. The other 6 agents turned their heads. "Define the situation," responded Derek calmly through the radio. "A huge monster," shouted Travis while continuing retreating through executive class. "Killed Nathan, it's too fast. Killed him in seconds." Caleb pressed the radio. "Travis, what is your position?" "Executive class, the monster is coming. It's coming now." Sound of shots echoed through the radio. Dozens of shots fired continuously. The sounds of Brett and Travis shooting, running, breathing in panic. "Keep shooting," ordered Derek. "All of you, prepare to repel the threat." The 7 remaining agents in the isolated compartment positioned themselves in front of the partition, rifles raised, awaiting whatever was coming. In executive class, the scenario was of pure chaos. Travis and Brett continued retreating, shooting in bursts. The werewolf was right behind them, visible only in brief flashes while it passed through the airplane lights. Brett turned while running. Shots continued echoing. With each burst of bullets they shot, some hit the internal structure of the airplane. The metal yielded under the impact of the 5.56 millimeter bullets. A bullet crossed the external fuselage of the airplane. Then another, and one more. In the cockpit, the pilot heard the alarm sound. His face paled while he observed the panel instruments. "Tower, this is Flight 447. We report abnormal pressurization, air pressure descending rapidly." One of the flight attendants, who had hidden in the gallery of executive class, heard the growing chaos. She knew that something terribly wrong was happening. Her hands trembled while she used the internal phone to contact the cabin. "Pilots!" Her voice was hysterical, almost inaudible among the screams of terror in the background. "There's a monster! A giant monster in economy class. It's killing passengers. It's destroying the airplane." "Repeat," said the pilot, not believing what he heard. "A monster! Big! With claws! It's killing everybody!" The communication was interrupted by an inhuman roar that echoed through the entire cabin of the airplane. In executive class, Travis and Brett continued retreating, their ammunition diminishing. The werewolf pursued them implacably, moved between the seats with impossible fluidity. And then more bullets hit the external fuselage. The airplane began to lose pressure. A sharp hum emanated from the ventilation systems. The lights blinked once. Then again, and then disappeared completely. The entire airplane became dark. Only the red emergency illumination remained, creating a frightening and disorienting penumbra. Oxygen system activated automatically. Masks fell from the compartments above in executive and economy classes. In the almost total dark, Travis and Brett couldn't see the creature with clarity. They only could hear its heavy steps, its growls, the sound of chewing while the werewolf devoured a nearby passenger. "Keep shooting!" shouted Travis, shooting blindly in the dark. Shots sounded. Shots that didn't hit anything beyond airplane structure, worsening even more the already significant damages. Travis turned to shoot, but couldn't see anything in the dark. "Where is it? Where is the thing?" A shadow. Only a shadow that moved through the red penumbra. The claw appeared and disappeared, then appeared again in a completely different place. Travis shot in the general direction, missed. The creature moved. Brett tried to position himself better, but was stumbling in the dark, his hands touching seats to guide himself, his rifle pointing to no specific place because he couldn't see anything truly. "Where are you?" shouted Travis, his voice breaking. The shadow was close to Brett, very close. Brett heard the growl and turned, shooting. But the creature was no longer there. It was now beside him. The claw penetrated his back with lethal precision. Brett felt the impact like an explosion of pain. His lungs collapsed. His rifle fell. He tried to scream, but only blood came from his mouth. "Brett!" shouted Travis. The creature turned to Travis. Its yellow eyes shone in the red penumbra, two circles of pure malevolence fixed on the federal agent. Travis shot. The bullet passed through where the creature had been. The monster jumped, not to the lateral, not to the ceiling, simply exploded forward with speed that defied comprehension. The claws crossed Travis's chest. He felt the fangs perforating his lungs. His eyes widened. The creature lifted him in the air, his body hanging from the claws that pierced him. Travis tried to scream, but only blood came out. The werewolf opened its mouth full of fangs and bit. Travis's neck was torn open in a fierce lateral movement. Blood spurted. His body convulsed a single time. An inhuman howl was heard through the radio and echoed through the entire airplane. Then everything became silent. In the isolated compartment, the radio silence was absolute. "Travis, are you there?" called Derek through the radio. No response. "Travis?" Only the white static. "Brett? Anyone?" asked Caleb. Silence. Derek exchanged looks with Tyler. Something was terribly wrong. "All agents, prepare yourselves," ordered Derek. "The threat may be coming in our direction." The 7 federal agents positioned themselves more firmly in front of the partition, rifles raised, awaiting. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then the pilot spoke through the intercom. "Attention, crew and passengers. We report significant structural damages on the fuselage. Pressurization compromised. Initiating emergency descent to Omaha Regional Airport. Approximate distance of 130 miles. We will arrive in 20 minutes. Assume safety position." In the dark of executive class, the werewolf continued its work. It killed systematically each passenger who tried to move, each crew member who tried to fight. There was no mercy. There was no hesitation, only the feeding. A flight attendant was found. The creature tore her to pieces, its claws cutting through flesh and bone with the same ease with which they cut air. A man who was trying to protect himself under a seat was grabbed by the ankles and dragged out. The werewolf threw him against a lateral wall with force sufficient to leave a red mark of full body. The man fell, his bones broken in multiple places, incapable of moving. The creature killed him. In the isolated compartment, Derek tried contact again. "Travis? Brett? Anyone?" Only static. Derek breathed deeply. "All of you, equip yourselves. We are going to verify the situation." "Derek, this is a suicide," said Tyler. "Perhaps," responded Derek. "But we need to know what happened to our men. We go in formation, all armed, body flashlights activated." The 7 federal agents checked their ammunition, activated the flashlights attached to their vests, and moved toward the partition. Derek opened it slowly. What they saw stopped them. Executive class in absolute chaos. Bodies scattered through all rows, blood everywhere, complete destruction, and no sign of the creature. "Let's go," said Derek, his voice hoarse. The 7 agents advanced slowly in the dark, only their body flashlights cutting the red penumbra of the emergency lights. Each step revealed more horror. Mutilated bodies, parts of people scattered. Bizarre and grotesque scenes of destruction. They followed beyond executive class, toward economy class, and then they saw. Illuminated by the body flashlights, the creature was finishing devouring a passenger. The man's body was already unrecognizable. The creature chewed pieces of flesh, its yellow eyes rising when the flashlight lights hit it. "Shoot!" shouted Derek. The shots exploded in the darkness. Rifles and high-caliber rifles shooting simultaneously in the confined space of executive class. The bullets cut the air, hitting seats, walls, the airplane structure, and the creature. The werewolf rose from the body it devoured, its snout still covered with fresh blood. Its yellow eyes shone intensely when the body flashlight lights hit it. For a moment, the monster remained immobile, as if evaluating its new adversaries. Then it roared. The sound was so deep that vibrations ran through the airplane. One of the body flashlights fell from the trembling hands of one of the agents. "Shoot! Shoot!" shouted Derek, his magazine shooting continuously. Tyler, Caleb, Sean, Kyle, Aaron, and Jimmy all shot. The sound of the rifles echoed through economy class in a constant thunder. Bullet casings fell to the floor like metal rain. But the werewolf moved with that impossible speed, an oscillating shadow that moved between the shots like a deadly specter. Its movements were so fast that only glimpses were visible in the flashlight light. One moment it was ahead. In the next, it was to the side, then behind. A bullet hit its leg. Dark blood dripped. The creature didn't decelerate, only continued its frantic movement pattern. "We can't hit it!" shouted Sean, shooting his entire magazine. The werewolf jumped to the ceiling. Its claws tore the metal structure as if it were paper. The creature ran through the ceiling, moving horizontally with a fluidity that defied all biological logic. "Down!" shouted Kyle, pointing his weapon upward. Shots sounded again. Bullets hit the ceiling, perforating the metal. More holes, more structural damages. The airplane continued to lose pressure. The werewolf descended. It directed itself directly to Jimmy. The agent saw the werewolf coming and tried to dodge, but the creature was too fast. The claws hit him in the back, tearing through the bulletproof vest as if it were wet paper. Jimmy screamed. Blood exploded from his wounds while he was pushed against the lateral wall. He tried to rise, but his legs didn't obey. The werewolf didn't stop. It turned to its next target. "Keep shooting!" ordered Derek, shooting his magazine with desperate precision. Caleb shot against the creature, trying to provide cover for the other agents. But the werewolf was practically an uncontrolled force of nature. The creature jumped to Kyle. The agent tried to retreat, but he stumbled on a corpse. He fell on his back. The creature descended on him. Its claws perforated Kyle's abdomen multiple times. Fast, 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 deadly. "Kyle!" shouted Aaron, turning to shoot. But the monster had already moved. The creature was now near Aaron Grayson. Its yellow eyes fixed on the agent like two beacons of pure malevolence. Aaron shot reflexively. Bullets hit the creature. One hit its face. Dark blood exploded. One of the yellow eyes was damaged, leaving an orbit partially destroyed. The werewolf roared in a form so primitive and violent that the window glass of the airplane began to crack. The creature advanced. Aaron tried to dodge, but there was no space in the narrow corridor. He was trapped. The claw crossed his chest. Aaron fell, his rifle escaping from his hands. He tried to breathe, but his lungs were full of blood. "Retreat! Retreat!" shouted Derek. Caleb, Tyler, Sean, and Jimmy continued shooting while retreating. Shots passed close to the werewolf. Some bullets hit. But the monster seemed immune to pain, only continued its lethal attack pattern. Sean tried to position himself better, turning to shoot a complete burst. The bullets hit the werewolf in the face, in the neck, in the torso. Dark blood dripped from multiple wounds, but the creature ignored completely. Its snout opened and it roared again. The werewolf jumped. Its broad shoulders hit Sean like a moving truck. The agent was knocked backward, his body flying through the corridor of executive class. He hit the lateral wall and fell on the floor, his bones breaking in the impact. The creature was over him in half a second. Its claws perforated Sean multiple times in a deadly blur. Sean's screams lasted only some seconds before being completely muffled. "Derek, continue!" shouted Tyler, his rifle shooting while retreating. 4 remaining agents, Derek, Caleb, Tyler, and Jimmy. They continued retreating through executive class, passing by shattered bodies, jumping over seat wreckage. Jimmy's flashlight had fallen, leaving them with only 3 light sources in the almost total dark. The werewolf pursued them, Caleb shot backward. His bullets passed close to the creature. The monster moved in patterns that no living being should be capable of executing. They arrived at the entrance of economy class. "To executive! To the front!" shouted Derek. They ran through executive class. Bodies lay in all rows here too. The werewolf had passed through here after killing Travis and Brett, continuing its massacre. A claw came out of the darkness. It hit Caleb in the lateral. The agent screamed and fell, his rifle escaping from his hands. Blood spurted from his lateral wound. "Caleb!" shouted Tyler, but there was no time to help him. Derek and Tyler continued running. The werewolf didn't lose much time with Caleb, only continued its pursuit of the other two. They arrived at the entrance of executive class. A claw came out of the shadow. It hit Tyler in the back. The agent screamed and fell, his rifle escaping from his hands. Blood spurted from his wound while he tried to crawl away. "Tyler!" shouted Derek. The werewolf didn't stop. Its claws continued their deadly work. Tyler convulsed, then became immobile. Derek ran alone now, the only federal agent alive on the airplane. The creature was each time closer. Its panting breaths echoed through the airplane. Derek shot his last magazine while running through executive class. The bullets hit the creature but made little difference. "I need to reach the partition," thought Derek desperately. But the creature reached him rapidly. A claw came out of nowhere. It hit Derek in the shoulder. The agent was knocked to the side, his body hitting a seat with force. His rifle escaped from his hands. Hot blood dripped from his wound. Derek tried to rise. The werewolf was over him, its yellow eyes fixed on the last federal agent alive. Derek saw death coming. The claws extended. Derek raised his arms to defend himself, but it was useless. Absolutely useless. The claw crossed his abdomen. Derek screamed in agony while being dragged close to the creature. The werewolf opened its mouth full of fangs. The fangs penetrated Derek's neck. The creature bit, ripping off pieces of flesh. Derek tried to scream, but only blood came from his open mouth. His body convulsed a single time. Then everything became silent. All 10 federal agents were dead. In the cockpit, the pilot heard the last sounds through the intercom. The shots stopped. The screams stopped. Only the frightening silence remained. And then, with each impact of the bullets that hit the airplane fuselage during the combat, more damages accumulated. The alarms began to sound continuously. Critical pressurization, fuselage compromised, hydraulic systems failing. The pilot grabbed the radio with trembling hands. "Omaha Tower, this is Continental Airways Flight 447. We report critical emergency situation. Massive structural damages on the fuselage. Multiple holes in the structure. Pressurization completely lost. Hydraulic system compromised. Initiating emergency descent immediately." The communication was weak, full of static. "Flight 447, are you clear? Can you repeat?" "Tower, airplane fuselage is destroyed. We receive fire from heavy caliber weapons inside the cabin. Multiple shots. Structure severely damaged. Initiating forced emergency landing to Omaha Regional Airport. Approximate distance of 25 miles. We will arrive in 20 minutes. "Flight 447, we don't understand your message correctly. You are having communication failure. However, emergency landing is authorized. Rescue teams will be mobilized to the location. Continue your controlled descent." In the airplane interior, the chaos had finally stopped. The werewolf had completed its work. All federal agents were dead. All passengers who were still alive in economy and executive classes were massacred. The creature remained in executive class, devouring the remains of its victims, its snout covered with fresh blood, its yellow eyes shining in the dark of the red emergency lights. In the isolated compartment, the 8 prisoners heard everything. The shots, the screams, the inhuman roar. The final silence that indicated that all their guards were dead. Eddie Kirkland whispered to Ronald Spears, "All were killed." Ronald only nodded, his eyes fixed on the partition that protected them temporarily from what was on the other side. The airplane continued its spiral descent, losing altitude, approaching each time closer to the ground below. 20 minutes until Omaha, and a hungry werewolf still aboard. Airplane 447 descended in controlled spiral toward Omaha Regional Airport. Its fuselage was damaged in multiple points. Holes allowed pressurized air to escape continuously. The engines operated in reduced capacity, vibrating constantly. In the cockpit, the pilot fought against the controls. "Tower, this is Flight 447. I have partial visibility on the instruments. Fuel pressure is low. Hydraulic systems compromised. I will need a direct approach." "Affirmative, Flight 447. You're in our radar coverage. We continue seeing you on the screen. Approximately 15 miles from Omaha. Descent to 2,000 feet. Understood. Initiating descent to 2,000 feet. The pilot adjusted the controls with precision. The airplane began its final approach. The runway lights of Omaha Regional Airport could be seen clearly now through the windshield. At the airbase, the emergency teams were ready. Fire trucks, ambulances, rescue teams, all positioned along the runways, all awaiting the damaged airplane that approached. In the airplane interior, in the isolated compartment, the 8 prisoners remained handcuffed in their seats. Some prayed silently. Others simply looked forward with empty expressions, processing the chaos that had occurred outside their isolated wing. Eddie Kirkland whispered, "We are going to die here." Ronald Spears didn't respond, only looked at the partition that separated them from the rest of the cabin. The airplane continued descending. 10 miles from Omaha. 8 miles. 5 miles. "Tower, this is Flight 447. Initiating final approach. I feel the airplane heavy. Flight control is difficult but manageable." "Affirmative, Flight 447. Continue your approach. You are aligned with runway 18. Wind from northwest at 10 knots. You are cleared for landing." "Understood. Initiating landing on runway 18. The airplane began its final descent. The landing gear wheels began to descend. Red lights blinked on the panels indicating that the gear was in place. But something was wrong. The frontal landing gear was not completely locked. One of the tires had been damaged by fire that passed near the fuselage during the combat. The pilot didn't know this yet. The airplane continued descending. 5,000 feet. 3,000, 1,000 feet. One could see the runways clearly now. The approach lights guided the airplane to the runway. 500 feet, 200 feet, 100 feet. "Touchdown in 20 seconds, said the co-pilot. The pilot adjusted the airplane inclination. The wheels were preparing for impact. 50 feet, 30 feet, 10 feet. And then it touched. The impact was violent. It was not a smooth landing. It was a hard impact. The frontal landing gear, damaged and not totally locked, yielded under the airplane weight. The Boeing 737 collapsed forward. The airplane nose hit the runway with a devastating force. Metal tore against asphalt in a scream of destruction. Sparks exploded. The airplane began to skid through the runway, uncontrolled. In the cockpit, the pilot tried to apply the brakes, but the hydraulic systems failed. The airplane continued skidding. In the isolated compartment, the prisoners were thrown forward. Safety belts extended to the maximum. Some went hitting their heads against the metal structures. Eddie Kirkland screamed when his body was thrown violently. Ronald Spears lost consciousness in the impact. The airplane continued skidding through the runway. 600 meters. 700 meters. 800 meters. More metal tore. More sparks exploded. The airplane finally began to decelerate, but was still in uncontrolled movement. In the cockpit, the pilot tried desperately to control the situation. 900 meters of runway consumed. The airplane began to exit the runway. And then it hit. It hit an emergency aggregate box positioned near the runway. The impact was so violent that it turned the airplane on its side. The Boeing 737 fell to the left. The wing hit the ground, then the entire fuselage. The airplane slid for 50 more meters before stopping completely. Inside the airplane, everything was chaos. Metal structures bent, glass exploded. The compartment was turned on its side. Passengers, chairs, baggage, everything mixed in a blur of destruction. In the cockpit, the pilot was thrown against the control panel with force. His body broke in multiple places. The co-pilot hit the lateral wall with equal violence. Both became unconscious instantly. Both died minutes later. Their internal wounds simply too much for any person to survive. In the isolated compartment, the impact was equally devastating. Eddie Kirkland was thrown from his seat. The handcuff that held him broke under the force of the impact. His body flew through the compartment, hitting the wall with force sufficient to fracture his skull. He died instantly. Ronald Spears was thrown too. His body broke in multiple places. Blood dripped from serious wounds. The other prisoners were all thrown too. Some died instantly. Others were seriously injured, didn't resist, and died. The airplane remained on its side, completely silent now. Only the noise of leaking fuel, of metal structures accommodating, of the emergency siren still sounding frantically before finally dying. Absolute silence. Outside, the rescue teams observed the airplane collide with the aggregate box and turn. Immediately, all began to move. Fire trucks accelerated toward the airplane. Ambulances followed them. Rescue teams with cutting tools began to position themselves. "We are going to have to cut it," said the rescue chief through the radio. "Positive. Prepare the teams. We need to enter within minutes." The firefighters used heavy equipment to open the fuselage. Metal was cut. Structures were removed. Slowly, an opening was created. The rescue team members entered first, with flashlights and medical equipment. What they saw left them paralyzed. Bodies. So many bodies. Scattered throughout the cabin, mutilated, shattered, destroyed. Parts of people on the floor, blood on each surface. The air smelled of blood and death. "God of heaven," whispered one of the firefighters. "What happened here?" asked the rescue chief, his voice weak. They continued advancing through the destroyed fuselage. Each step revealed more horror, more bodies, more impossible scenes to explain. In economy class, they found dozens of corpses. In executive class, only more corpses. Several bodies scattered on the floor. And then, one of the firefighters stopped. "Here, there's someone alive." All team members turned. Among the destroyed seats, on the floor of executive class, there was a figure, a person, human, but was naked, completely naked, without any clothing, and was unconscious. The body was covered with blood. Its face, and mainly its mouth, were with blood stains. However, no obvious wound, no mutilation or exposed fracture, no visible damage. "How is it possible?" murmured one of the paramedics. He approached cautiously, checking vital signs to confirm what the firefighter said. "Has pulse, breathes, is alive." The paramedics placed the survivor on an emergency stretcher with care. Its body was cold. Its breathing was weak but present. "We need to take him to the hospital immediately," said the rescue chief. Meanwhile, they continued to explore the airplane. What they discovered left them in complete shock state. 153 passengers, 22 in first class, 8 prisoners, 10 federal agents, 2 pilots, approximately 5 flight attendants, a total of 201 people aboard Flight 447. 201 people, and only 1 survivor. A single body found in that airplane, alive. "I never saw anything like this," said the doctor of the rescue team. "How did one person survive this?" Nobody had an answer. The survivor was taken rapidly to Omaha Methodist Hospital. Its body was placed in intensive care. Doctors examined it completely. No obvious fracture, no open wound, no apparent internal contusion, nothing that explained how he had survived the massacre and the airplane accident. But there was something strange. Its body showed signs of violence, small lacerations, contusions, as if it had been in a fight. But how had it arrived at that state in an airplane? Nobody could answer. Hours passed, then days. The survivor remained unconscious. When he finally woke up, a police officer was immediately called. "What is your name?" asked the police officer to the patient. The man opened his eyes slowly. His eyes were confused. Empty. I don't know," he responded with weak voice. "What is your name?" repeated the police officer. The man only looked at him. His eyes didn't contain recognition. Didn't contain memory. "Where am I?" asked the man. "You are in the hospital. You survived the accident of Flight 447. All the others aboard died." The man only blinked. Nothing in his face indicated that he had understood. "What is your name?" asked again the police officer. I don't remember," said the man. "I don't remember anything, nothing." His look was lost, distant, as if he looked at an abyss that nobody else could see. After that, investigation was made, forensics, and it was never totally explained what happened on that flight. Nobody ever discovered the truth. Who was that man? Why was he naked? How had he survived when all the others died? Why couldn't he remember anything? The mystery of Flight 447 remained without solution. A single anonymous survivor. A story impossible to explain. And the truth, whatever it was, remained buried with the 200 bodies in the cemetery. Flight 447's nightmare at 37,000 feet is a chilling reminder that some monsters don't just hide in folklore. They hunt among us, tearing through flesh and steel alike. The lone survivor's amnesia leaves us wondering, was he truly a victim, or was he the beast itself? We'll be here to uncover more mysteries that defy explanation. Like this video if you felt the terror of being trapped in the sky with an unstoppable predator. Comment below what was the most horrifying moment for you, the massacre in the cabin, or the sole survivor with blood on his face and no memory. Share it with someone who needs to know that nightmares can board flights, and that not all passengers are human. And if you dare to face what lurks in the shadows, subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and hit that notification bell. Because when darkness descends at cruising altitude, you'll want to know the truth before it's too late.